Hey guys, let's start with a story tonight. After cartographer Lu Mingyuan encounters the boundary guide in the northern desert, he makes a pact, creating foldable maps with ghost routes that lead to many people going missing or experiencing strange changes. Later, seeking redemption, he crafts a map hiding reverse patterns, and Su Mo, the younger sister of his assistant Chen Mo, uncovers the map's secret, then sets off for the western regions with the map to find her missing brother. So before you get too comfortable, take a second to like this video and subscribe, only if you truly enjoy what I'm doing here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is right now. It's always fascinating to see people from all over the world joining us. In the autumn of 1910, the wind in the northern desert was like shards of glass mixed in. It didn't just hurt when it scraped the face, but sent a piercing, itchy tingle to the bones. Lu Mingyuan raised his hand to wipe the dried blood from the corner of his mouth, his fingertips brushing the stubble on his jaw, stiff as camel thorns in the wasteland, pricking his skin sharply. This was his 14th day stepping into this unnamed land. Only a shallow layer of fresh water remained at the bottom of his water skin. When he shook it, he could hear the faint rattle of gravel hitting the leather. The brass compass on his horse had long lost its way, its needle spinning wildly like a mad dog, the silver-plated dial scratched with fine lines by the sand and wind, much like his proud geographical knowledge, which was being gnawed away bit by this wilderness. Mr. Lu, going further ahead is the Stone Ghost Circle. The locals say that place is cursed. Guide Batu tightened the reins of his horse, his reddish-brown face filled with fear. He pointed to the vague black outline protruding on the distant horizon. A caravan took shelter there from the rain last year. When they came out, they were all crazy, saying they saw houses growing in the sand and stones talking. Lu Mingyuan let out a sneer and took off his gold-rimmed glasses to wipe the lenses. Behind the lenses, his eyes were narrow and sharp, filled with the arrogance of a genius. As a cartographer who had studied abroad, he had spent 3 years correcting 37 erroneous coordinates on the imperial territory map, and the detailed map along the Beijing-Zhangjiakou Railway he personally drew was collected by the royal family. In his cognition, the so-called cursed was nothing but an unnamed geographical phenomenon, and the so-called mad talk was just the ignorance of fools facing the unknown. Put aside your superstitions, Batu. He put his glasses back on, his gaze piercing through the sand and wind. What the court wants is a border map precise to every inch of land, not hearsay ghost stories. Batu wanted to argue, but was silenced by the determination in Lu Mingyuan's eyes. The young cartographer had a near-obsessive enthusiasm, as if the desert before him was not a forbidden zone for life, but a canvas waiting for him to conquer. Helpless, Batu could only take out a bag of dried mutton from his luggage and handed it to Lu Mingyuan, whispering a warning. "If you don't come out before dark, I'll wait for you outside the mountain for 3 days. After 3 days, I'll build a stone cairn for you." Lu Mingyuan didn't take the bag of mutton. He dismounted nimbly, slinging the cowhide bag containing his mapping tools over his shoulder. The pencils, scales, and parchment inside were all his weapons, except for the brass telescope he had brought back from abroad, whose lens was now covered with a layer of haze, making it impossible to see the true appearance of the distant stone formation clearly. "No need to wait for me." He walked toward the stone formation without looking back. "I'll bring the coordinates of the stone formation to find you before dawn tomorrow." The stone formation was even more ferocious up close. Dozens of dark blue-black boulders lay scattered haphazardly. The tallest stood 3 men high, their surfaces coated with a salt crust as thin as cicada wings, glinting with a cold, rigid metallic sheen under the sun. The carvings on the stones were definitely not made by human hands. Shallow and deep grooves filled with fine sand, the deepest enough to fit a thumb, yet their edges were unusually smooth, as if stroked repeatedly by an invisible hand. As the sun set, the howling sand and wind suddenly fell silent, and the world was plunged into an eerie stillness. Even the occasional howl of a lone wolf in the distance disappeared, leaving only a salty, earthy smell in the air, like the oppression before a heavy rain. Lu Mingyuan took out his compass. The needle froze completely, pointing firmly at the concave boulder in the center of the stone formation as if attracted by a magnet. He took a deep breath and stepped onto the gravel toward the center. The sand under his feet had changed temperature somehow. No longer the scalding heat of the day, but a faint, sinister warmth, like the temperature of a dead man's skin, with slight undulations as if something was breathing beneath the sand. When his fingertips touched the concave boulder, a bone-chilling cold rushed up his veins. Not the cold of stone, but the cold of nothingness, like an ice pick piercing his blood vessels, making even his bones tremble. A pool of turbid water had collected in the concave surface of the boulder, and he saw his reflection distort in the water, his nose and eyes shifting positions to form a strange face. The sky suddenly darkened. It was clearly still dusk, but it was instantly swallowed by inky blackness. Lu Mingyuan fumbled to take out a match from his cowhide bag, only to find that he couldn't move. It wasn't that he was restrained, but that he couldn't move cognitively. His brain clearly sent the command to raise his hand, but his limbs were stiff in place as if they didn't belong to him. Immediately afterward, he saw that existence, not with his eyes, but with the geographical knowledge he had cherished all his life. That thing had no shape or color, like a rift torn from crumpled space, so black it could devour light, floating in the center of the stone formation. As it slowly approached, the precise longitude and latitude lines, contour lines, and river basin maps in Lu Mingyuan's mind began to collapse, twist, and reorganize. The Mercator projection formulas he had memorized while studying in Germany turned into a mess. The length of the Beijing-Zhangjiakou railway tunnel he had personally measured fluctuated before his eyes, and even the coordinates of the most familiar Yellow River ferry began to blur. He saw the lines representing mountains on the border map he had drawn come to life, coiling around his consciousness like venomous snakes. He heard the geographical data he had once known by heart turn into meaningless roars, mixed with women's cries and children's laughter, seeping out of the void. Your coordinate system is very interesting. A cold, inhuman consciousness appeared directly in his mind. There was no sound, yet it carried an undeniable pressure. Stable, precise, like a solid lighthouse. Lu Mingyuan's teeth chattered uncontrollably, not from cold, but from extreme fear. The geographical cognition he had built all his life was like a child's block tower before this existence, ready to collapse at any moment. What are you? He roared with his consciousness, only to find his thoughts had become sluggish. The boundary guide, the consciousness replied. I feed on cognitive anchors. Your anchor is very delicious. Cognitive anchors. The phrase was like a key, unlocking a gap in Lu Mingyuan's chaotic thoughts. He suddenly realized that this so-called boundary guide did not devour flesh, but human beings' certain cognition of the world. The crazy caravan members had not seen illusions. Their cognition had been completely distorted, leaving them unable to distinguish between reality and nothingness. Spare me. Lu Mingyuan's consciousness begged for mercy. His arrogance shattered completely in the face of absolute power. I can give you many things, gold, silver, jewels, whatever you want. I only want cognitive anchors. The boundary guide's consciousness trembled with a hint of pleasure. But I can make a deal with you. I'll give you ghost coordinates, those spatial nodes forgotten by time and overlooked by humans. With them, you can draw maps beyond your era and become a true giant of geography. In return, you just need to provide me with food. Food. Lu Mingyuan's consciousness trembled. Other cognitive anchors. The boundary guide's consciousness clearly conveyed the terms of the contract. Exchange their certainty for your glory. Those who pursue the unknown have inherently fragile anchors. They are the perfect sacrifices. The wind in the stone formation began to blow again, carrying the stinging pain of sand hitting his face. Lu Mingyuan suddenly found himself able to move. He stumbled backward and fell onto the gravel. The stone formation in front of him returned to normal, and the afterglow of the setting sun streamed through the gaps between the boulders, casting golden light on the back of his hand. It was as if everything just now had been an illusion, but in his mind, countless clear coordinates had appeared. These coordinates were not on any existing map, flickering like ghosts in his thoughts. He took out his parchment and pencil and began to draw almost instinctively, the tip of the pencil moving rapidly across the paper, sketching twisted and bizarre routes that carried a fatal allure. When he finished the last stroke, the cold consciousness in his mind sounded again. The contract is sealed. Remember, Lu Mingyuan, I am your shadow, and you are my hunter. That night, Lu Mingyuan did not go to find Batu. He sat by the stone formation all night, leaning against the cold boulder, watching the stars move from east to west. The night wind carried sand and gravel that hit his face, but he felt nothing. At first, there was deep-seated fear of becoming like those crazy caravan members, fear of the nothingness after his cognition completely collapsed. Then came struggle. The temptation of glory was like a red-hot iron, burning his heart. He remembered the humiliation of being mocked by foreign classmates for Chinese people not understanding precise cartography while studying abroad, and the eager eyes of the officials from the Zhongli Yamen. By midnight, fear was replaced by fanaticism. He took out the parchment and stroked the bizarre routes repeatedly by the light of the stars, the trembling of his fingertips gradually turning into firmness. He knew that from this moment on, the pure cartographer Lu Mingyuan was dead. What remained was a hunter symbiotic with a monster. His brush would flow with the cognition and lives of others, drawing one man-eating map after another. The next morning, when Bata found him, Lu Mingyuan was sleeping leaning against the boulder, with a piece of parchment covered in bizarre routes beside him. When he woke up, there was a calm smile on his face, as if he had just completed an ordinary survey. "Let's go back," he said to Batu. "I found something that will advance imperial geography by 20 years. Batu looked at the unfamiliar light in his eyes, opened his mouth, but finally said nothing. He only noticed that a dark blue-black vein had appeared on Lu Mingyuan's left index finger, much like the carvings on the stone formation, glowing with an eerie luster in the sun. In the spring of 1911, catkins drifted profusely over Beiping. Lu Mingyuan's name spread throughout the academic world with the publication of his precise survey map of the borderlands. In the bookstores of Lulling, this expensive atlas was placed on the most prominent Nanmu bookshelf, lined with brocade, and a magnifying glass was provided for browsing. On the dark blue cover, the gilded characters Lu Mingyuan shone brightly, dazzling in the sun. The inscription on the title page, "Latitude and longitude clear, world distinct," was written personally by the Grand Secretary of the Zhongli Yamen, the ink thick and forceful, penetrating the paper. The bookstore owner hired 2 clerks to guard it specially, fearing it would be damaged. An elderly scholar wearing a melon-rind cap compared the village coordinates on the map repeatedly with a magnifying glass, muttering constantly, "It's even 3 parts more accurate than the unified annals of the Great Qing." Several young men in foreign-style suits argued around the bookshelf, saying they were going to explore the borderlands according to the map, their tones full of confidence. Explorers stared at the areas marked to be surveyed, stroking the map repeatedly with their fingers, their eyes brighter than jewels. Lu Mingyuan's studio was located in a courtyard house near Dongjimin Lane. Every day, all kinds of carriages lined up in front of the Vermilion Gate, 8-carried sedan chairs for academic giants, foreign-style carriages for foreign firm bosses, and adjutants in military uniforms coming to ask for private survey maps on behalf of generals eager to expand their territories. "Mr. Lu, this is a gift from the British minister." A translator in a tailcoat placed a gilded box respectfully on Lu Mingyuan's desk. "The minister said your map is more accurate than their country's latest military map." Lu Mingyuan sat behind his pearwood desk, holding a silver fountain pen between his fingers, revising a draft sketch with his head down. He was wearing a well-tailored foreign-style suit, custom-made at a foreign firm in Dongjimin Lane, the wool fabric soft and delicate, with a starched white shirt at the collar. His hair was combed neatly, held in place with hair oil, not a single strand out of place. Behind his gold-rimmed glasses, his eyes were calm and confident, but in the blind spot of the lens reflection, there was a hint of imperceptible fatigue. "Please thank the minister on my behalf," he said without looking up, his tone flat as if he was already used to such praise. His fingers unconsciously stroked the cap of the fountain pen, a gift from his mentor while studying abroad, which now felt uncomfortable against his palm. The translator left wisely, glancing at the draft sketch on the desk before leaving. It was a design drawing of a foldable map, with complex lines and many strange symbols, looking not like an ordinary geographical map, but an exquisite mechanical device. When he was alone in the study, the smile on Lu Mingyuan's face faded slowly. He put down the fountain pen and opened the gilded box, inside which was a fountain pen inlaid with sapphires. He picked it up, but felt a chill in his fingertips. The dark blue-black vein on his left index finger had become even clearer. Does glory taste good? The boundary guide's consciousness appeared quietly, as it always did when he was alone. Lu Mingyuan did not answer, but stood up and walked to the window, watching the catkins falling in the courtyard. 3 months ago, he was a surveyor who had returned in embarrassment from the northern desert. 3 months later, he had become the most sought-after genius cartographer in Beiping. All of this originated from the ghostly coordinates in his mind and the contract with the boundary guide. "It's time for the first batch of food." The boundary guide's consciousness carried an urging tone. "Your precise survey map of the borderlands has aroused enough curiosity. Now it's time to throw out the real bait." Lu Mingyuan's fingers tightened around the window lattice, his knuckles turning white. He knew that the bait was those foldable maps. He had spent 3 months developing a unique folding technique. The maps were made of paper crafted from Nordic fir bark, which had tough fibers and would show different patterns under light at specific angles. On the surface, the maps featured exquisite regular travel routes, marking inns, post stations, and scenic spots. But when users folded them in a specific order under light, the ghost routes hidden behind the creases would appear, outlining the path to the unknown secret realm in an eerie fluorescent green. "They are all voluntary," Lu Mingyuan whispered to himself, as if trying to convince himself. "They are the ones who crave adventure and the unknown." That's right. The boundary guide's consciousness sneered. It's their greed that makes them choose to be sacrifices. You just provide a path. The first batch of foldable maps was named Secret Realm Map of Yen and Zhao, priced 10 times higher than ordinary maps. Even so, they were sold out within 3 days. The buyers were mostly young explorers, wealthy young men eager for adventure, and some speculators dreaming of making a fortune. They were attracted by the promotional slogan, "Discover undocumented lands," on the map cover, unaware that the map itself was a fatal trap. The first to bring news was a wealthy young man named Lin Wenxuan. He had gone to the Taihang Mountains in western Hebei with 2 servants, following the ghost routes on the secret realm map of Yen and Zhao. Half a month later, only he returned. When Lin Wenxuan found Lu Mingyuan, he looked like a beggar crawling out of a sandpile. His dark blue silk mandarin jacket was torn open in 3 places, revealing the cotton wadding inside stained with gravel, and half a dry camel thorn hung from his trouser leg, emitting a smell of sweat and dust. His hair was messy like a bird's nest, dotted with grass clippings and dirt, and his face was streaked with black marks, but his eyes were unusually excited, bloodshot yet dazzlingly bright. "Mr. Lu, your map is amazing." He grabbed Lu Mingyuan's arm with such force that his nails almost dug into Lu Mingyuan's flesh. "We found a village with blue bricks and gray tiles, morning glories climbing the walls. The people there all wore Ming-style cross-collared robes and spoke with a Shaanxi accent. The houses were made of wood, with peony carvings on the window lattices, and the river water was as sweet as honey, even purer than the spring water from Yuchuan Mountain in Beiping. They treated us to steamed buns, made of white flour, so soft they crumbled at the touch. Taste I've never had before. Lu Mingyuan pulled his arm back calmly, noticing that a blank confusion flashed in Lin Wenshuan's pupils from time to time. "What about your servants?" he asked. "Servants?" Lin Wenshuan froze for a moment, the excitement on his face fading, replaced by empty confusion. I didn't bring any servants. I went alone." Lu Mingyuan's heart sank. He knew that Lin Wenshuan's cognitive anchor had already begun to collapse. The servants had most likely become food for the boundary guide, while Lin Wenshuan, with his relatively firm will, had only had part of his memory eroded, becoming a living propaganda tool. Sure enough, after returning, Lin Wenshuan began to publicize his adventure everywhere. His story was published in newspapers, making the secret realm map of Yan and Zhao even more famous. More and more people, driven by the desire for the unknown, set off along those ghost routes. Every day, Lu Mingyuan's studio received letters from all over the country. Some were filled with gratitude and admiration, describing those paradise-like scenes. Others were pleas for help from family members, asking about the whereabouts of their missing loved ones. Lu Mingyuan never replied to those pleas. He locked the letters in the bottom drawer of his desk, as if locking away his conscience. Once, an old woman came to his studio, trembling on a jujube wood cane. The head of the cane was polished smooth by years of holding. Her blue cloth scarf was dusty, her dark blue jacket washed pale with 2 patches on the cuffs, and she clutched a cloth bag tightly in her hands, wrapped tightly. Her son, a young explorer in his early 20s, had gone to the frontier with the secret realm map of Yan and Zhao and never returned. "Mr. Lu, please tell me where my son is." The old woman's voice was hoarse, like sandpaper rubbing. She slowly opened the cloth bag, revealing a yellowed photo inside. The young man in the photo was wearing a student uniform, smiling brightly, with a hint of youthfulness in his eyebrows. Before he left, he said that following your map, he would definitely make a great discovery, and that he would buy me a fox fur coat from the frontier. It's been more than 3 months. Not a single letter. Lu Mingyuan looked at the photo, and the dark blue-black vein on his finger suddenly began to burn. He avoided the old woman's gaze, his voice cold. "My map only marks routes. I am not responsible for tracking the whereabouts of users." The old woman froze, and tears slowly filled her cloudy eyes. "How can you say that? That's a human life," she muttered, stumbling out of the studio step by step with her cane. After the old woman left, Lu Mingyuan locked himself in the study and drank an entire bottle of foreign wine. It was a bottle of French brandy, a gift from the British minister, which he had never been willing to drink. The spicy liquor burned his throat, but it couldn't suppress the turmoil in his heart. He looked at the piles of honorary certificates on his desk, their gilded covers dazzling under the light. He looked at the inscription from the Zhongli Yamen on the wall, every character mocking his hypocrisy. He picked up a pencil and drew frantically on the paper, drawing those ghost routes, drawing the devoured people, the excited face of Lin Wenshuan, the cloudy eyes of the old woman, the crazy looks of the caravan members, and the cold boundary guide. The tip of the pencil grew shorter and shorter, scratching deep marks on the paper, even piercing through it. The ink seeped out, blurring into black stains like flowing blood. But no matter how he drew, he couldn't depict the struggle and pain in his heart, couldn't depict the souls he had personally pushed into the abyss. "You are wavering." The boundary guide's consciousness suddenly appeared, carrying a cold warning. "Don't forget our contract. Without me, you are nothing." Lu Mingyuan threw the pencil on the ground and roared, They are all humans, not your food. Humans? The boundary guide's consciousness sneered. In my eyes, they are just fragile cognitive anchors. Just like you, if you break the contract, your anchor will be completely devoured by me. At that time, you will be worse off than those crazy people. You will lose yourself completely, becoming an empty shell without cognition. The dark blue-black vein on his finger grew hotter and hotter, as if on fire. Lu Mingyuan collapsed into his chair, gasping for breath. He knew that the boundary guide was telling the truth. He had already formed a symbiosis with this monster. Once the contract was broken, he would be doomed. The next day, Lu Mingyuan launched his second batch of foldable maps, the ancient search map of the northern frontier. This time, he added 4 words to the promotional slogan, "Life and death at your own risk." But in the face of the temptation of glory and adventure, these 4 words seemed pale and powerless. The maps were still sold out in an instant, and countless people still embarked on the path to destruction, driven by the desire for the unknown. Lu Mingyuan stood by the window of his study, watching the prosperous scene of Beiping. The dark blue-black vein on his finger had spread to his wrist. He knew that the mask he wore was getting thicker and heavier, and the heart beneath the mask was being gnawed away bit by guilt and fear. He was like a man riding a tiger, forced to follow the tiger's will with no way back. During the Spring Festival of 1912, Beiping was shrouded in a festive atmosphere. Red lanterns hung along the streets and alleys, firecrackers exploded one after another, and the air was filled with the smell of dumplings and sulfur. But Lu Mingyuan's studio was as cold and quiet as a tomb. He hadn't gone out for 3 days. On his desk were scattered several sheets of Nordic fur paper, a quill pen stained with invisible ink, and an exquisite paper knife. He was making his 3rd foldable map, the last one, he told himself. What finally made him resolve to resist was a young cartographer named Chun Mo. Chun Mo was Lu Mingyuan's townsman and admirer. 3 months ago, he had traveled thousands of miles to Beiping to join Lu Mingyuan, bringing with him the first map he had drawn. Seeing his great talent, Lu Mingyuan kept him in the studio as his assistant. Chun Mo was diligent and down-to-earth, respectful to Lu Mingyuan, and often accompanied him to work late into the night in the study. Last month, Chun Mo accidentally saw the design sketch of the ancient search map of the northern frontier and became deeply interested in the hidden ghost routes. "Mr. Lu, these routes are very strange. I've checked all the ancient books and survey records, but there's no record of them," he said, holding the sketch with a look of confusion. "Do these places really exist?" Lu Mingyuan was shocked and instinctively reached out to snatch the sketch. But when he saw the pure thirst for knowledge in Chun Mo's eyes, he stopped. This young man was much like himself in his youth, full of love for geography and awe for the unknown. He didn't deserve to be a sacrifice to the boundary guide. "These are just my ideas. They may not be real," Lu Mingyuan replied vaguely, putting the sketch away. "You're still young. Don't always think about going to those dangerous places." But he never expected that Chun Mo would secretly take a copy of the ancient search map of the northern frontier. He left a letter pressed under the plotting instrument Lu Mingyuan often used. The letter paper was bamboo pulp paper commonly used in the studio, its edges crumpled from being held tightly. The handwriting was neat and elegant at first, as was Chun Mo's style, but the last few words suddenly became scribbled, as if the writer's hand was trembling. "Mr. Lu, I know you have your difficulties. I've checked all the classics but can't find these routes. But I believe they are real. I want to verify these routes. When I come back, we can perfect this map together, making it a true masterpiece handed down from generation to generation. I've always remembered the triangulation method you taught me. I won't let you down." At the end of the letter, he drew a small compass pattern, a mark they often used when discussing mapping techniques. After Chun Mo left, Lu Mingyuan's heart was always on edge. He prayed every day that Chun Mo would not find those ghost routes, that he would return safely. But a month later, he received a letter from the northern frontier. The handwriting on the envelope was Chun Mo's, but it was crooked and distorted. The content of the letter was very short, written on a piece of paper torn from an account book, with the stamp of an inn, Shangyun Inn on the frontier, printed on the edge. The handwriting was crooked, as if written with the left hand, some strokes even broken, and the ink was uneven, clearly written in a state of extreme weakness or confusion. Mr. Lu, I saw a city. There's no one there, only shadows. Black shadows wandering the streets like they have no bones. My compass is broken. The needle spins like a top. I can't find my way back, and I even forgot which direction the sun rises. I seem to be forgetting who I am. Sometimes I think I'm Chun Mo, sometimes I think I'm one of the shadows in the city. By the way, I've always remembered the mapping techniques you taught me. I drew the city I saw on the back. Look if it's the ghost coordinate you mentioned. On the back of the letter paper was a scribbled sketch, the lines twisted, but it could be seen that it was a square city with the characters Yong'an written on the city gate, the strokes trembling. This letter was the last straw that broke Lu Mingyuan's psychological defense. He held the letter and cried in the study all night. He remembered Chun Mo's youthfulness when he first arrived, the way he drew maps earnestly, and the light in his eyes when he said, I want to become a cartographer like Mr. Lu. It was him, his maps, that had ruined this young life. That's enough. When the boundary guide's consciousness appeared again, urging him to speed up the production of the new map, Lu Mingyuan finally summoned up his courage and roared with his consciousness. I won't help you lure anyone else. If you want to devour my cognitive anchor, then come. The dark blue-black vein on his finger suddenly became scorching hot, as if countless needles were pricking his flesh. Severe pain made him fall to the ground, twitching all over. Do you think you can resist me? The boundary guide's consciousness roared with furious pressure. Your body, your consciousness, you are already marked by me. If I want, I can turn you into a madman or an empty shell at any time. Lu Mingyuan gritted his teeth, endured the pain, and climbed up from the ground. He walked to the desk and picked up the quill pen stained with invisible ink. I can't stop you from devouring me, he gasped, but I can leave a way out for those who come after me. The third map he was going to make was named Lost Trail Map of the Western Regions. On the surface, it was the same as the previous two, with exquisite regular routes and tempting promotional slogans about secret realms. But in the creases and interlayers of the map, he would draw reverse patterns with invisible ink. These patterns were interference lines he calculated based on the energy fluctuation rules of the boundary guide. When someone revealed these reverse patterns in a specific way and walked along them, they could temporarily isolate the consciousness erosion of the boundary guide and find their way back to reality. Making these reverse patterns was much more difficult than he had imagined. The invisible ink was a special blend he made with vinegar, calcanthite, and cuttlefish ink. He ground dried cuttlefish bones into fine powder, filtered it 3 times with double-layered gauze to ensure there were no particles, then mixed it with boiled calcanthite water, stirring until completely dissolved, and finally added mature vinegar until the liquid turned dark brown. When dropped on paper, it penetrated instantly without leaving a trace, only showing a pale blue glow when soaked in vinegar of a specific concentration. The drawing process required extreme precision. Every angle and length of the patterns had to form an accurate counterbalance with the ghost routes on the map. The slightest deviation would greatly reduce the interference effect, or even lead in the wrong direction. The quill pen he used was custom-made from Jiangnan, its tip as thin as a hair. When dipping ink, he had to control the force precisely. Too much ink would spread, too little would fail to draw clear lines. What was more dangerous was that he had to complete all this under the watchful eye of the boundary guide. On the surface, he drew the ghost routes as required by the boundary guide, but secretly, He used complex binding techniques to hide the reverse patterns in the interlayers of the map. He designed the folding sequence of the map to be extremely complicated. Only by folding it in a specific order could the starting point of the reverse patterns coincide with the starting point of the ghost routes. To allow those who came after him to discover the secret, he also carved an extremely small character Mo on the map cover. One character from Chen Mo's name, a token of his guilt and remembrance for this young assistant. He hoped that one day, someone would associate this character Mo with Chen Mo's fate and thus discover the secret hidden in the map. During those days of making the map, Lu Mingyuan barely slept. His body grew weaker and weaker, his face as pale as paper, his eye sockets sunken and bloodshot, his lips chapped and peeling. The dark blue-black vein on his finger had spread to his elbow, coiling like a snake, and from time to time, it sent a piercing pain. Especially when he drew the reverse patterns, the pain would suddenly intensify, as if countless needles were pricking his flesh. Several times, the severe pain made his hand shake, and the tip of the pen drew an extra line on the map. He had to carefully scrape it off with a small knife and redraw it. The slightest mistake would ruin the entire map. The boundary guide seemed to sense something was wrong, and began to torture him with pain frequently, even creating illusions in his consciousness. He often saw the devoured people standing in the study, Lin Wenxuan, the old woman's son, Chen Mo, all staring at him with blank expressions, their eyes empty. But every time he saw Chen Mo's letter on the desk, the scribbled sketch of the city on the back, he would clench his teeth, wrap a handkerchief around his wrist to relieve the pain, and grip the pen tightly again, continuing to draw. "You are wasting your time," the boundary guide's consciousness sneered coldly. "No one will discover your little trick. Even if someone does, they won't believe you. In the face of glory and adventure, human reason has always been fragile." Lu Mingyuan ignored the sneer. He knew his power was weak. This secret might never be discovered, and this map might still become a man-eating tool. But he had to do it. It was the only thing he could do to atone for those he had indirectly killed, for Chen Mo, and for himself. On the day the Lost Trail map of the Western regions was completed, Lu Mingyuan carefully put the map into a brocade box. Then he opened the bottom drawer of his desk and took out a thick work diary. In the diary, he detailed the process of his contract with the boundary guide, the nature of those ghost routes, and the method of discovering and using the reverse patterns. Finally, at the end of the diary, he wrote a line, "Emoja Moyi. The path lies in Mo. The soul lies in the path." Emoja, a pun, referring to Chen Mo's courtesy name, Emoja, and meaning silent one. Mo also refers to ink. After writing this line, he put the diary and the quill pen stained with invisible ink into the brocade box together. He knew that the boundary guide's punishment would come soon. All he could do was send this brocade box to a safe place. He thought of Batu, the guide who had warned him about the danger of the stone formation in the northern desert. Although Batu was superstitious, he was honest and reliable. Lu Mingyuan called his old steward, instructing him to send the brocade box to a bodyguard agency in Zhangjiago overnight, to be delivered to Batu, and to pass on a message. "This is a return gift from the stone formation. Please keep it safe and wait for someone who can understand the character." After the old steward left, Lu Mingyuan sat alone in the study. He lit a candle and looked at the Lost Trail map of the Western regions under the candlelight. The ghost routes on the map glowed with an eerie fluorescent green in the candlelight. He reached out and stroked the reverse patterns hidden in the creases, a relieved smile appearing on his lips. "I've done my best," he whispered to himself, and to those he had hurt. At that moment, the candle in the study suddenly went out. A familiar coldness surged from all directions, enveloping his body. The boundary guide's consciousness roared with extreme anger in his mind. "You betrayed me! You will pay the most painful price for your betrayal." Lu Mingyuan felt no fear, nor did he resist. He closed his eyes, feeling his cognition being eroded bit by bit, feeling the once precise longitude and latitude lines, contour lines, gradually collapsing and disappearing in his mind. He seemed to return to that stone formation in the northern desert, to the night he first met the boundary guide. But this time, there was no fear in his heart, only a peaceful sense of relief. One day in March 1912, the people of Beiping were surprised to find that Lu Mingyuan's studio had suddenly become empty. The first to notice something was wrong was an explorer who came to ask for a map. He knocked on the door for a long time, but no one answered. The neighbors said they hadn't seen Mr. Lu go out for 3 days, nor had they seen his steward return. Everyone felt strange and reported it to the authorities. When the government officials opened the door of the studio, everyone was stunned. Everything in the study was neat and tidy. The books and stationery on the desk were arranged in order, and the honorary certificates and the inscription from the Zhongli Yamen on the wall were still hanging there. The only abnormality was an extinguished candle on the desk and a sheet of unfolded white paper. On the white paper, written in a cold, inhuman handwriting, was a line. "I am the map. The map is the prison. The anchor is lost. Where is the way back?" No one knew where Lu Mingyuan had gone. Some said he had been invited to give lectures at a foreign university. Some said he had taken his maps to find those unknown secret realms. Others said he had been secretly killed for offending someone. All kinds of speculations emerged, but there was no conclusive evidence. Just as he had suddenly become famous, Lu Mingyuan's name suddenly disappeared from the hustle and bustle of Beiping. Only the old steward knew that Lu Mingyuan would probably never return. But he kept Lu Mingyuan's instruction, safely delivering the brocade box to the bodyguard agency in Zhangjiago and handing it over to Batu. When Batu took the brocade box and saw the note from the old steward that read, "A return gift from the stone formation," his heart skipped a beat. He remembered the young cartographer with the unusual eyes beside the stone formation 2 years ago. He did not open the brocade box, but hid it in the cellar of his house, pressing it down with a stone slab. He didn't know what was inside, but he knew it must be something extremely important. Time passed quickly, and autumn came to 1912. The academic world of Beiping still talked about Lu Mingyuan's legend and disappearance. In tea houses and restaurants, storytellers often adapted his story into scripts, exaggerating it to tell to guests, saying he had been taken as a disciple by immortals to draw maps of the heavenly realm. And his third map, the Lost Trail map of the Western regions, like the previous two, flowed into the world through various channels. Some collected as rare treasures by antique shop owners, some bought at high prices by explorers, and others passed on to foreign missionaries. In the treasure-gathering pavilion antique shop in Tianjin Wei, a young woman named Su Mo stood in front of the counter, her eyes fixed tightly on the Lost Trail map of the Western regions in the glass case. Su Mo was in her early 20s, wearing a plain cloth skirt, her hair tied into a simple bun, adorned with a silver hairpin, a memento left by her mother. She was also a cartographer, having studied traditional mapping techniques with her father for 5 years, and later learned Western surveying and mapping methods in a modern school. After her brother Chan Mo disappeared, she sold the family's fields and traveled all over the country in search of him. From the letters her brother left at home, she learned about Lu Mingyuan and the ancient search map of the northern frontier. So she traced her way to Beiping, and from an explorer, she learned that the Lost Trail map of the Western regions had fallen into the hands of someone in Tianjin. "Miss, this is Mr. Lu Mingyuan's last map, and it's not cheap," the antique shop owner said, holding the map carefully. "Look at the craftsmanship, the paper, they're all one of a kind. Many explorers wanted to buy it, but I never wanted to sell." Su Mo paid no attention to the owner's promotion. Her entire focus was on the extremely small character Mo on the map cover. The character Mo was carved in the lower right corner of the cover, smaller than a grain of rice, almost impossible to find if you didn't look carefully. She took out a brass magnifying glass her brother had left her. One Mo had specially bought for her in Beiping, with her name engraved on the handle. She aimed it at the cover, adjusted the angle, and examined it carefully under the shop's light. This character Mo was written exactly like the one in her brother's letters home, with a long, powerful left stroke, tilting slightly upward at the end, a unique style of Chan Mo's. Moreover, the carving was new, with no wear on the edges, clearly carved specially after the map was completed. It was completely different from the bold and powerful signature style of Lu Mingyuan on the precise survey map of the borderlands. More like an intentional mark, a code only she could understand. "I'll buy it." Su Mo didn't hesitate, taking out all her savings from her carry-on bag. She believed that her brother's disappearance must be related to this map, and this character Mo was the key to unlocking all the mysteries. Back at the inn, Su Mo couldn't wait to open the map. Following the instructions on the map, she began to fold it under the lamp. When she folded it to the third layer in a specific order, the hidden ghost routes finally appeared, glowing with an eerie fluorescent green. Sumo's heart couldn't help but speed up. She remembered the shadow city her brother had written about in his letter, and the missing explorers. She knew that behind these routes, there must be a huge secret. She held the map and examined every crease and pattern carefully. Suddenly, she noticed that something seemed to be faintly visible through the fibers of the paper in one of the map's interlayers. Sumo's heart raced, and fine cold sweat broke out on her palms. She remembered the shadow city her brother had mentioned, the missing explorers, and the look in her father's eyes when he told her on his deathbed, "You must bring your brother back." She knew that behind these routes, there must be a great secret. She took the map back to her rented room at the inn, a small north-facing room with only a bed and a dilapidated wooden table, her luggage piled in the corner. She spread the map on the table and examined every crease and line carefully under the dim oil lamp. Suddenly, she noticed that something seemed to be faintly visible through the paper fibers in one of the map's interlayers, like a faint water stain or tiny lines. Su Mo remembered a mapping trick her brother had once taught her. Soaking in vinegar of a specific concentration could reveal invisible ink made from cuttlefish ink and calcanthite. It was a secret between the siblings. Chen Mo had said, "In the future, when making maps, use this method to hide secrets. No one will ever find them." She immediately found a coarse porcelain basin borrowed from the innkeeper, with a small chip on the edge. She poured half a basin of warm water, took out a small porcelain bottle from her cloth bag containing mature vinegar she had specially brought from Shaanxi, the brand her brother loved most. She carefully poured out a third of the vinegar, stirred it evenly with a bamboo chopstick, and small bubbles appeared on the water's surface, emitting a sour smell. She took a deep breath, held the map with both hands, and gently placed it in the basin, ensuring it was completely soaked in the vinegar solution. After a few minutes, a miracle happened. The reverse patterns hidden in the interlayers slowly revealed a pale blue glow in the vinegar, like fireflies on a summer night, faint but clear. These patterns intertwined with the fluorescent green ghost routes, counterbalancing each other to form a complex and precise route map. At the starting point of the reverse patterns, there was a line of small characters written in invisible ink, the handwriting delicate and somewhat hasty, but extremely clear. "Emoja, the path lies within. Reverse it, and you shall find the way back." Emoja was her brother's courtesy name, known only to her and Lu Mingyuan. Tears streamed down Sumo's face instantly. She knew that this must be a clue left by Lu Mingyuan. "Brother, I found the way," she whispered, her fingers stroking the pale blue patterns. "I will definitely find you, and I will definitely uncover this secret." Early the next morning, as soon as dawn broke, Su Mo set off for the western regions with the lost trail map of the western regions. Her luggage was simple, a coarse cloth backpack containing mapping tools, the brass plotting instrument left by her brother, several pencils, a roll of parchment and daily necessities, 2 naan breads, a small bag of water, a thick cotton-padded jacket, and a dagger left by Chen Mo, bought in the northern frontier with anti-slip patterns carved on the hilt. She carried it with her always, as both a weapon and a memento. In the outer pocket of the backpack was a photo of her brother, wrapped tightly in plastic cloth to protect it from sand and dust. The innkeeper watched her thin figure disappear into the morning mist, sighing and muttering. Another one who doesn't value their life. Little did he know that this young woman was not seeking adventure, but her loved one, and to uncover a terrifying legacy spanning the boundaries of cognition. At the same time she set off, Batu in Zhangjiago stood in his cellar, looking at the sealed brocade box. He faintly heard the distant jingle of camel bells, as if summoning something. He knew that the person who could understand the character Mo would come sooner or later, and all he had to do was guard this brocade box, guard this terrifying legacy that spanned the boundaries of cognition. The wind blew across the Gobi of the western regions, stirring up clouds of dust that stung Sumo's face. She pulled her cotton-padded jacket tightly around her, leading a rented camel, walking step by step. The camel's hooves crunched on the gravel, the only sound in the silent Gobi. Sumo's figure seemed insignificant in the vast Gobi, like a tiny grain of sand, but her eyes were extremely firm, staring straight ahead. She didn't know what awaited her. Her brother's haggard but alive figure, the terrifying void form of the boundary guide, or more secrets left by Lu Mingyuan. She didn't even know if she would return alive, but she knew she had to go on. Her brother was waiting for her. The devoured cognition was waiting for redemption, and this nightmare triggered by the map needed someone to end it. For this man-eating map not only devoured cognition and lives, but also carried hope and redemption. And this struggle spanning the boundaries of cognition had only just begun. The secrets hidden in the creases, the redemption flowing in the ink, would eventually be revealed by the new cartographer, uncovering its mysterious veil. The wind continued to blow, and the road stretched on. The ghost routes and reverse patterns on the map intertwined into a huge net under the sun, waiting for new explorers to touch the boundary between life and death, and to find the truth hidden deep in cognition.